for your 5-minute opening statement.
Thank you, Chairman Connolly, Ranking Member Heiss, and subcommittee members. On behalf of the 5 million federal workers and annuitants represented by the National Active and Retired Federal Employees Association, I appreciate the opportunity to express our views regarding the future of federal work. NARFE members dedicated their careers to serve our nation. They want federal service to succeed in its mission. To do so, the federal government must be able to recruit the next generation of federal workers. NARFE and its members are here to pass the torch. We live in a world that is becoming more interconnected, yet increasingly polarized. We face rapid technological, environmental, and economic change. This presents the federal workforce with new challenges, like responding to a global pandemic, but also new opportunities to utilize technologies to better serve the American people. Unfortunately, federal government personnel practices have not kept up with the pace of change. The last major reform to personnel management laws was 43 years ago, and the executive branch has failed to use existing authorities and capabilities to the extent it should. There is widespread recognition that federal personnel management needs modernization. As it stands today, federal agencies suffer from mission-critical skills gaps. According to GAO, these skills gaps impede the government from effectively serving the public. In fact, skills gaps contribute to 22 of GAO's 35 other areas identified as high risk. Agencies face a worsening situation. Nearly 28% of employees are eligible to retire within the next 5 years, yet only 8% of federal employees are younger than 30. In the private sector, that number is 23%. It's also worse than it was 10 years ago. Today, every federal agency has fewer employees younger than 30 than they had in 2010. Unsurprisingly, this coincides with a large decline in federal internships from more than 60,000 in 2010 to about 4,000 in 2020. It's clear the federal government must focus on attracting more talented individuals into federal service. The good news is there's no shortage of good ideas to do so. We agree with the president's management agenda that we need an all-of-the-above approach. That approach must start with the recognition of a key source of problems. Current hiring processes are often too complex. As a result, it takes too long to bring somebody on board. Because they're too burdensome, agencies often bypass competitive hiring. None of this serves merit-based hiring principles well. Rather than undermining those principles, process improvements would improve fidelity to them. We also must improve federal internship programs. The Next Gen Feds Act would help to do so, and I applaud Chairman Connolly for his leadership. The creation of a federal fellowship and scholarship center, an online internship platform, and a reinvigorated PATHS program could serve as important tools. Providing competitive examination credit for qualified interns would help convert them into full-time employees. However, we urge the committee to consider a shorter time frame or even a sliding scale of credit based on the length of the internship. Finally, ensuring interns are paid opens the door to recruiting a more diverse set of individuals into service. Government-wide improvements in hiring employees and improving internship programs will rely on the revitalized and forward-thinking OPM. We are very encouraged by Director Ahuja's leadership and OPM's initial response to the NAPA report. We also endorse the Strengthening OPM Act to codify several of the recommendations. We urge OPM to press forward on implementation. We also urge this committee and Congress to provide support where needed and continued oversight to ensure progress. Efforts to improve federal hiring must also ensure the federal government provides competitive pay and benefits. While federal employees are often attracted to the government by commitment to its mission, they face the same economic realities as other Americans. Even the best hiring practices and most compelling missions will not overcome substantial differences in compensation. We must ensure pay rates do not fall too much further behind the private sector, authorize special pay authorities when needed, and preserve the value of existing benefits, which remains an important tool for recruitment and retention. Federal agencies may also be able to take advantage of the changing nature of work by expanding telework operations over the long term. Such an approach could save taxpayers through increased productivity and provide a more attractive work environment for many current and prospective employees.
Mr. Thomas,
I want to thank the committee.
Mr. Thomas, if you could sum up.
I want to thank the committee for allowing me to present today.
Thank you so much.
You know, how do good relations between unions and agencies affect both work product and the effectiveness of the agency, and also the quality of work life for the employees?
Thank you, Mr. Raskin, for the question. While NARFE is not a union, we do believe in the practices that they can bring to the table. Part of what goes on with any group of employees, especially if they're unionized, is that there can be productivity issues, there can be confrontational issues with the supervisor. There can be all kinds of things that are going on. So you have union, you might say, capabilities there to use them. If you're a manager, you can use them to your advantage. So that would be one of the.
Well, let me pick up on that point. I appreciate that. Okay. Let me come to Ms. Amante. You know, while the polls are showing that unions are being held in very high esteem, only 10% of American workers are union members now, and only around 6% for private sector unions. It's a bit higher in the public sector. There are more than 1 million federal employees who are represented by labor unions right now. That's aside from postal workers. And to follow up on the point Mr. Thomas was making, do you think that the federal government can leverage strong union and worker association participation in the federal workforce to attract and retain talent, to help recruit and bring in new workers?
Thank you for the question. I think we need to leverage every possible tool in the toolbox to be recruiting talent into the federal government, including our unions. Our unions are important stakeholders at the table. They represent the federal workforce voice. And I welcome, and the partnership welcomes their ideas, and this committee should welcome their ideas and thoughts on recruiting the next generation.
Yeah, and Mr. Thomas, do you agree with that unions can be part of the solution here in terms of making federal employment a really attractive and exciting option for the young people who are launching their careers? Absolutely.
I firmly believe that unions can be used for that particular purpose, and I think we need to do probably more of it. There were members of my family that were members of unions in the past, PATCO for one, many years back. But the thing is that unions have their place not only in recruiting, but also in retaining employees. So very, very, you might say, involved with the various organizations or agencies within the government.
Cool. I'd like to follow up with you on a final question, Mr. Thomas. Since you do represent hundreds of thousands of retired federal employees, and you've had a chance to think about all of these issues about the status and the public reputation and image of federal employees, what is the effect of politicians who just sort of with wild abandon attack federal workers, whether they are people who are they're working on nuclear safety or OSHA safety, or they're working to get people their Medicare checks, or they're working to make sure that everybody's paying their fair share of the taxes, whatever it is. What do you think about politicians blasting federal workers? And do you think that creates a problem for us in terms of recruitment and the image of federal workers?
The gentleman's time has expired, but the witness may respond.
Thank you, Chairman. I think it's, again, it's what's new. The thing is that this has been going on for a considerable period of time. And every time we have to sort of confront that, whether it's a news article or whether it's a citizen who comes up and says, I didn't get the service that I was entitled to or wanted to get. So whether it's a politician or a member of society out there making accusations, unfortunately, it's you can't. How do I want to say it? You can't really solve everybody's problem. We try to be the best that we possibly can. We try to provide the services to the population, and unfortunately, sometimes we get a bad rap from not only politicians but also from the society in general about that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That with the best of intentions, such a program would circumvent normal civil service hiring by giving a special credit if you served as an intern. How would you address that criticism?
Mr. Chairman, I think I don't think the criticism is well taken for the simple reason that this is something that's very diverse from what you normally would be seeing. You're looking at creating the pipeline, you might say, for encouraging people to apply, not only apply, but also get into the federal workforce, or another way of getting into the federal workforce. So I'm not sure the criticism is deserved at all.
And if I could just follow up on that with you, Mr. Thomas, if my numbers are correct, we're looking at about 30% of the entire federal workforce being eligible for retirement in the next several years. That translates into around 600,000 people.
That is correct.
And the total federal intern number is about 4,000 currently. Is that correct?
Correct.
So
yeah,
it
dropped from 60,000.
Right.
Yes.
So the idea that somehow this is a violation of and circumvents in some profound way the civil service, merit system of hiring is a little bit of a stretch, given the fact we're talking about less than 1% of the entire federal workforce being interns, if we're lucky. Is that correct?
Yeah, we sort of look at it over at NARFE. We look at it as part of our tool belt, something that can be useful.
Exactly.
And that's the purpose of it.
Yeah, and even professionalizing it. There's the thought. The private sector does that and does it very well. We do not do that professionally or well in the federal government. There's just no way you can look at it and draw a different conclusion. And I think we have a lot to learn from the private sector. I mean, you look at some companies, I won't name them, but if you're lucky enough through a competitive process, I might add, to be hired as an intern, the chances are 90% you will be hired by that company and you will accept that job. I wish we had something like that in the federal government, especially when we look at the enormous void we're going to have in terms of how do we recruit this massive number of people who have to replace people who are about to retire.